Happy New Year's! This is episode 49 of our Road to Unicum, and today we review the AMX 13105. This is the Tier 10 French light tank, and it was the most requested tank based on the previous video which covered the Batchat 12T. There are a few things to know about Tier 10 light tanks. They are underpowered as a class. There are no Tier 10 lights that are in the top 20 for win rates, and there are a couple reasons why. They tend to have very inaccurate guns for Tier 10, like in the case of the 13105, the three preceding tanks in the line between Tiers 7 through 9 all have an accuracy of 0.38, whereas the accuracy on this gun is 0.42, which makes it very unreliable relative to what you would be used to playing a Tier 10 tank. The other thing to know about the Tier 10 lights is that they have unusual penetration drop-off, right? It's something I haven't seen with other classes. And in my opinion, the penetration drop-off is totally unneeded, given that the penetration for the Tier 10 light tanks is already lower than any other class, which makes sense, but the penetration drop-off on top of that seems pretty excessive. I stopped there in the field to take a few pot shots at that Batchat 12T. It is a long way, but it's worth taking some shots. Even if one of them lands, you know, it's going to then drop them down into two-shot territory. And where I've been wanting to go down to is this bush that's around the D3 area. Now, I shouldn't have knocked down that tree, because if anyone's looking at that bush, you know, that would give away the fact that some tank is here. And I'm going to withhold my shot here. I'm kind of waiting to see if our Arty will pick up this STA or our 140. But either way, you know, I'm close enough that if I fire, that medium tank might spot me. So I'm going to be patient here and see if there are any other tanks that are coming over in the field. Their Sheridan does start to slide over to engage our 1390, so I go ahead and take a shot, even though I know it might cause me to lose my camo, which it does. So I immediately move, and the only tank that I know that's out here aside from the Sheridan and they're the light tank is the STA, so I just need to move on the other side of those trees, this ridge here. Our team finishes off both of those light tanks, which is really good. That's going to help us a lot with the vision. And then I just turn right around and come back to this bush, because I can outvision this STA all day long. There really isn't much of a shot here, but in this case, I go ahead and take it. If I hit, you know, again, that'll drop him into one-shot territory. And then while I'm reloading, I have that habit of always, you know, hitting that F8 key so that my team knows when I'm reloading and when I'm not. That's especially crucial if one of them is expecting me to provide some offense and help them out, right? But our 1390 is pretty beat up, so I'm going to go ahead and tank point now in the field. It's funny, I got the far eastern spawn, which is really annoying on this map, but you know, it is what it is. You know, I come over a little bit late, and now, you know, now I can help out. The other thing to know about this particular Tier 10 light tank is that it has atrocious agility in terms of its turning, right? Like, generally speaking, light tanks are pretty agile, and you can use that agility to kind of drive circles around tanks and do fun things like that. This tank turns a bit like a whale, and it's a combination of the hull traverse and then the terrain resistances, but either way, you can't flank and circle tanks to the extent that you do with other tanks, because this is just simply not agile enough. Now, I'm trying to keep it so that you can notice the inner part of that white circle, which is the max 445 meter view range, is just encompassing the edge of cities so that I can spot their tanks that are out there. And I want to help take out each tank that I can see along the edge. So the next tank up is this medium tank. Now, I am close enough that he does spot me, and I back up a little bit looking for shots on tanks, and then their mouse chin backs up. And while this is a pretty far shot, you know, around 400 meters, I'm able to put two shots through him. Now, if there were softer targets available, I probably would have shot at them over the mouse chin. However, that mouse chin was perpendicular, right? So his armor is flat to me, which is going to offer me the highest penetration values or the lowest effective armor values for him. And then I'm sliding over to see if they might have some tank destroyers that are sitting on the other side of these trees. Sometimes people will be kind of clustered around the, you know, eastern or southern part of the lake, and then this mouse chin is still giving me his sides flat, so I'm going to go ahead and dump my clip, and I'm far enough away from him, he probably lacks the view range to even be able to theoretically spot me. But, you know, one good thing though, you know, about damaging or softening up heavy tanks is that mouse chin has a very strong armor profile, right? And so, you know, if he is angling his armor or he's side scraping, can be really problematic for our team. Our team has lost city pretty badly. Matter of fact, we only have one tank left on the northern side to Scorpion. For whatever reason, he's pushing towards city, which makes no sense. He seemed like he was either AFK or camping near our spawn earlier. I'm not sure, but either way, by going into city, he's essentially signing his death warrant. And then I do spot both their 183 and their T28 prot. They're coming back to kind of counter us in field, so I can't stay here. You know, obviously the 183 can one-shot me. The the T-28 prod has some decent armor that is very capable of bouncing, the shells from my gun, especially given that I only have 234 silver penetration that does have that steep, weird tier 10 light tank penetration drop off. So we've lost city pretty badly now. What I'm telling the team is the only way we're going to win this is if we vision them. We can't go in city and brawl. They've got the heavier tanks, they've got more of them, and they've got the higher tiers. And so I'm flexing back out to the west, and really what I want to do is stay so that my white circle just encompasses the edge of city. So if they try to come out and engage us, I'll spot them, or in this case, like our 140 is pretty close to them. But this way, I can always try to work for that first shot advantage, which is really critical, especially if you're trying to come back from a deficit like this, right? So their TVP T50 is pushing down, and he finishes off one of our medium tanks, but he's pivoting here, which gives me the opportunity to take some shots on him. And I land 2 in a row, and then if only this third shot had landed, we would have taken him out right there. He is one-shottable to me, but I didn't kill him, and he is the most dangerous of the tanks they have left in terms of both mobility and vision control, and then his compact burst. But at least getting 2 shells into him is going to help in a big way. Now, I have a full amount of HP, and so I need to be aggressive. I wouldn't normally brawl with this tank, but in this case, our 140's down to 700 hit points, and I think he's communicated that he's got some engine damage, so he's not going to be particularly mobile. Our 1390 here is making a pretty big mistake. What he should try to do is get perpendicular to me in terms of our fields of fire, meaning that if I spot something, he'll be able to see its sides and vice versa, right? So the best place for him to go would be somewhere down around E1, and you can see our arty is actually communicating that someone needs to watch the 1 line. And if our 1390 had gone out into the field, any of their tanks driving through field, he would outspot, and that would give an opportunity for arty to work. Now this Jag Tiger was just pushing up toward the edge of the city. Because there was a bush between us, he didn't spot me, and then that follow-up shot by the 704 misses. And that's really one thing which can be frustrating about playing this tank. The base 0.42 accuracy is really bad. I mean, it would be poor for like a tier 7, tier 8 tank, but it's just flat out bad for a tier 10. And I have to be careful here because we don't know where their TVP T50 is. Like he could be on the other side of this ridge, and that's why as soon as I had fired a second shot on the 704, instead of staying there, I opted to drop down into the ditch a little bit more and hit reload. So taking out that TVP is really going to be a priority. And our 190 is kind of floating along the A lane, but he's not far enough out. Like if you have arty in your team, you should never be at the same depth as your arty, because once you get spotted, it means your arty is going to get spotted at the same time, which is useless. You need to be out in front of arty far enough that you can spot things that the arty can shoot, and the arty won't get counter spotted. Right, so I'm coming back towards field because our 1390, and part of the thing is, like, I understand that our 1390 is at low health, and he's probably much more concerned about staying alive than anything else, but we're conceding or not leveraging our vision advantage. And then once I spot this 183, you can see I'm trying to turn left, counterclockwise, so that I can put a bush on this ridge between me and the 183 and dump my clip without being spotted. Remember, you're always trying to use that intervening soft cover. I talked about this at length in episode 41, which was my in-depth guide to playing light tanks, and managed to track the 183 and then finish him off. So that's a big kill. We're only down by 1 tank, but then a couple unfortunate things happened. One, their 704 finishes off our 140, and then their TVP had smartly used his speed to circle counterclockwise or clockwise all the way around the map, come up that 1 line, which we didn't protect, right? If our 1390 had been out in the field, we would have spotted that TVP a mile ago, and either the 1390 or the arty could have finished him off. But I have caught this 704 out here, and that second shot missing was just such a shock in the moment, because that's like a point blank rear shot, and had I landed all 3 shots, he would be dead, and what's about to happen would not happen. So I'm stuck in a tough situation. If I try to climb up the hill to the right, going south, I'll be going so slowly that it's an easy shot for the 704. So I opted to kind of swerve a little bit and come all the way down the long way here, hoping that the 704 might miss due to the movement. And then I could fire back at the 704, but my big concern is I don't know where the TVP is. And if he's up on the ridge over by the 5-6 line, and I fire and I get spotted by the 704, he's going to clip me out. I'm done. So I want to create some separation from the 704, and what I'd like to do is drag this into 3 separate one-on-ones instead of a 1 versus 3, and then I spot the TVP who's coming over the hill aggressively, and I managed to put him down. So that's huge. This has gone from being a much more unpleasant situation. I know the 704 is one-shottable now. The only bad thing about this, because I missed that second shot, right? So the 704 lived. He took off over half my health. I'm now one-shottable by the 704 or two-shottable by the T28 Prot. So I want to keep milking, my vision control and mobility advantage, or at least relative mobility. Like I said, this tank doesn't really turn so well, which is really frustrating, as a driver. I do like this tank a lot. I love light tanks. I love the French line. I find that an autoloader clip size of 3 tends to be pretty ideal, because you can limit your exposure to dump your clip, and you don't get stuck in like those odd situations like when you're driving the Bat Chat and you've got 2 shells and you don't, do I hit reload or do I not hit reload? Because if I hit reload, I can't fire for like 3/4 of a minute. Anyway, so a 3-shot clip tends to be very manageable and tends to have manageable clip reload times. Now, driving out in the field to try to spot their T28 Prot, see if I could catch him out here, use vision control, blow him up, and so he's not out here. And they do have a tank in cap. My guess would be it's probably the 704, given that he was in proximity to the cap when last I spotted him. But regardless, the T28 Prot probably isn't too far away, as long as he didn't stop somewhere within city, right? And so I'm kind of coming up carefully behind a bush just to see. Sometimes people pick really stupid positions to try to cap. They'll be not near a bush, they'll be in the open, or they'll be driving in circles, which I find to be pointless and largely stupid. This Prot was in a good position, and after he tracks me, I immediately burn my repair kit because I need to keep going around him to the side to circle him clockwise so that I can take flanking shots. Now the 704 hasn't been spotted, but my guess is that he's probably watching the 9 or 0 line, which is why I'm cutting south pretty quickly, or southwest. And so, if he is down by the 9-0 line, not to give him an easy shot. And it turns out that guess was pretty good. He's actually coming from that direction. And so what I'm going to do here is, once he drops my vision control, once he drops from my, being painted for me, I can kind of assume the same thing for him too. And I'm going to take a minute here to just reposition, because he might have seen me up until the time when I was near that bush. I don't want to let him pre-aim at me, so I'm going to reposition. And here's kind of like the game of blind man's bluff. He knows that I'm out here. He may not know which side I'm coming towards. And in hindsight, what I probably should have done is gone back clockwise and come down the A lane. But either way, what I want to do is work toward the cap gradually, move up between bushes, because like I said, if there's a bush between the two of us, but the bush is nearer to me, then I'll have the vision control advantage. That's the way the camo system is implemented. So unfortunately for me, he's not sitting in the open somewhere, and at some point I'm going to need to do something like that. There is actually enough time that I could try driving around clockwise, but in this case, I just figured, he's either looking at me or he's not looking at me. At this point, I don't have any idea, so I'm going to work down a little bit closer and then make a run at him. And if he is pointing to the west, then I'll be able to probably squeeze off 2 shots before he can even fire at me. But unfortunately, he's pointing right at me. But I get really lucky. His shot rolls low on the damage, and so that gives me 2 opportunities to finish him off with the last 2 shots of my clip. But in my opinion, I got very unlucky, when that second shot in the clip against him missed. And I was looking at that, I think I had exited sniper mode. I don't know if that had anything to do with the shot missing, but either way, it just ended up creating a lot more problems for me in that match than were necessary. But at least you get to see kind of how I'd manage a late game situation with half health or less. So this is an all tier 10 battle in Steppes, and a lot of times I like to push down the 9-0 line. I've talked about this in other videos. It's a lot less, there is an initial bottleneck when you're pushing past that area where the cap is, but once you get there, you can kind of work up onto the shelf on the 9 lane or stay down in the ditch, and allows you to get underneath your opponents, and it's a great way to flank them. The western side of the map, even in a heavy, I wouldn't go there because I find it's easier to push on the east side of the map, and because the west side of the map becomes so funneled, right, and you just don't have a lot of flexibility. What I'm trying to do is see if we can get some early damage on other tanks that might be camping. Their TVP I spotted immediately, but most players by the time they get to tier 10 have 6th Sense, so he knows he's spotted. Plus, it's really easy to obtain female crew commanders, which I think is great. And notice I withheld my shot there against the 103 for a little bit because I was waiting to see if one of our friendly tanks would fire, because I don't want to fire and scare him off. I want someone to hit him, and then I can fire. Now, I start to drive away. The 103 is already dropped from my spotting, which probably means, the reverse is also true. So I'm just going to work my way back up to this bush. There's no reason not to. And at this distance, you have to kind of assume that if you fire, tanks are going to counter spot you too, right? Like that E4 is close enough. I mean, he no doubt had sixth sense, because the second he realized he was spotted, he backed up immediately. I'm not really loving our deployment here. We've got our IS-7 is kind of sniping from the back. Our Type 5 Heavy on the one line is pushing up to the rock, but he's doing so solo, and our WZ is sitting back along with the IS-7 in somewhat of a campy position. The problem with this is, looking at the map, that Type 5 Heavy is going to get dogpiled at some point. The 183 has a big gun, but has such a long reload. That's kind of scary. So the E4 moving up here that I'd spotted a little while ago, I will go ahead and take a shot, because he was giving me a side hull, but again, from this distance, once I fire, the bushes that are in front of me are no longer offering concealment, and I'm well inside the 445 meter view range, and I get spotted. So I was talking about what's going on the western side of the map. Obviously, I'm trying to spot and see if I can work some damage on the backline snipers down along the H lane. Right, but it's important to kind of read the map and understand what's going on. I'm telling our team, like, look, there are a lot of their tanks west. West doesn't look so good right now, and while I can't communicate to our team, both the WZ and the IS-7 are not giving me the warm and fuzzies in terms of their being so passive and hanging back. So what we really need to do here on the 9-0 line is just push in and out DPM them. We've got them outnumbered 6-3, so let's share hit points. Let's just burn through them as quickly as possible. And I'm now pushing to the front for a few reasons. One is I need to encourage our players to be aggressive, and you can do this and influence this by where you go and what you spot. And I'm also going to try to work so that I get perpendicular to our guys. Now, I think in this case, trying to cap really isn't the smart play. I've kind of beaten this topic to death, but if you're sitting in cap, you're doing nothing but capping. On an encounter mode, it takes forever, right? But notice I very consciously stay below this little ridge here on the 9-0 line, and then I drive perpendicular up onto a bush. So there's no time at which someone who happens to be looking over that ridge would see me unless they could spot me through this bush. Now, obviously, I am firing here. The E4 is a big tank, and notice he gets tracked, and after he burns his repair kit, he moves perpendicular to me. So that's an easy side penetrating shot. And then here's the downfall, the .42 accuracy. I mean, with a .38 accuracy, the 103 is dead. Somebody else takes him out, and that's great. But this gun really isn't that reliable. And I heard some really bad arguments. People are like saying, well, the guns for the tier 10 light tanks are made bad so that people aren't encouraged to snipe in it. And like, look, you're not going to be able to there's nothing you can do to stop people from sniping. If they want to snipe, they're going to snipe, even if it makes no sense. People do it in all the tiers playing light tanks, right? But what it does is just put light tanks at tier 10 at a significant mechanics disadvantage, because like the medium tanks, for example, have better armor, better DPM, better alpha, and better accuracy, right? So what exactly is a light tank supposed to do, compared to that, right? There's really not much that can be done. Now that T-57, when I drove up to the bush, I was doing that, I had the first shot advantage, and I was having to be a little bit aggressive. At some point, I'm going to need to engage them, and I was trying to save our Patton. I wasn't able to do that, but at least we killed the T-57, which was huge. And then our T-62, if he kind of held the corner, I might have been able to shoot 2 or 3 shots into this bat chat. I do manage to get 1 shot, but he spotted me now. He's going to sit behind the rock, and then the 62A comes down in circles. But part of the problem is where the 62A is, he's just put himself sandwiched between 2 autoloaders, right? So the bat chat can push around and fire him, and then the TVP can push this way and also fire him. So again, it's one of those things, it's a hard thing. Like, nobody likes having a bat chat running towards them, but he is a T-62. He does have great turret armor. The bat chat has terrible depression. He might have been able, between the two of us, we might have been able to get 4 shots into the bat chat. And as it is there, I managed to dump 2 shots into the TVP, and now I'm zigzagging, to the extent that's possible with this not fast-turning tank. But, it is a bat chat, 25T firing at me with .38 accuracy and not great gun handling. So the scary thing for me is just crossing that gap. I managed to cross, and I don't know if the TVP either didn't have time to aim in at me, or he was on reload. But either way, I managed to get away with only eating one shot. So definitely a bit lucky, but speed can be really helpful. And then I'm gonna, because the C5 is right in front of me, I'm gonna go ahead and cut across and then get that easy side flanking shot. Now, watching the map, their TVP is going to reset cap, right? And as it turns out, we do get really close to capping them out, but again, in tier 10, it's really hard to win through capping, especially in an all tier 10 match like this, because tanks have too much speed. The E100, I was running laterally to him in field because most E100s are using heat. That is a very slow moving shell, which means that it is difficult to hit leading targets. Notice like his shot was way behind me, and then this IS-7 hits me, then for whatever reason he shows me his rear. I don't know why, but it just made my life a lot better. The Bat Chat hits me with one of those two shots, and then notice he's no longer looking at me. And that's the thing to watch with autoloaders. If you don't know how many shells they've dumped, just watch their behavior. The second they turn and start to run, or their gun's facing away, they're just trying to get out of there. So he's got a much longer reload than me. I can't let this guy off the hook. We're still, we still don't know where their JP is. And that actually ends up having a big effect on the match, unfortunately, right? But I want to keep pressuring this Bat Chat, and either hopefully, right there, I almost flipped my tank over. That would have been so bad. Thankfully, our Striv 103 gets a nice shot, and then puts their Bat Chat down. So our E50M still sitting in cap. At this point, it's fairly pointless. This, again, this battle's not going to be decided by capping. Both our E100, if you kind of watch where he's been driving, he contributes very little to the match, and then the E50M actually did very little damage, like only 1,400 damage or so, before he ended up farming the JP at the end. So I'll just take the suspense out and just tell you, their JP is AFK, which is super unfortunate for them because he's got 2,000 hit points, he's got a strong armor profile, he's got a hard-hitting gun. Had he not been AFK, we probably would have lost this battle because, the other guys, the SRV 103, B had a really good game, but the last, look at the E100's line, how conservative he's going. He's a heavy tank, and he is taking the most conservative route possible, and that southeast corner doesn't have anything. The T-62 and I were there. Their arty's not hiding back there. Their arty's not going to be along the J line or K line on the eastern half of the map. We already know this, right? So their arty, if he's smart, probably would have gone to H1. That would be what I would do, and then there's the AFK JP100, and so hoping, I just need to get two shots into this 261, and then he shotguns me, which is a real bummer. It would have been nice just to at least get one shot in on him, but I was close, and he did fire a leading shot. He got me, but like I said, if that JPE had not been AFK, we would have probably lost this battle. I can't see how we would have won. And a tank like the JP100 would take me 2 full clips to kill. It's just a lot of hit points to work through. So I ended up, I don't know, close to 5,000 damage. But the main thing I want to really call here is just having the map awareness, using those bushes and vision control to help your team have that vision control advantage. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please post your comments and feedback. And like I said, I've got other tanks I could show you guys. I think Type 64 will be coming up pretty soon since that's so popular. The T30, let me know what you're interested in, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.